Hello again. This is part 2 of a guide to making your first game for absolute beginners. Obviously you're a beginner if it's your first game. And last time, all we did was we made a room, we made a sprite, we made an object, and we made that object move around the screen. So I'll just show you where we were. I'm not going to do too much recapping because otherwise every episode is going to get really long. So we can move with the WASD keys. And that was done by some code in the step event, which is the thing that runs 30 times a second. And all we did was we defined a variable called mySpeed, set it to 10. Could have written any word there, and if you say that equals 10, every time you use that word, GameMaker will know you mean the number 10. And then we said if you press W, reduce our Y coordinate by that much. If we press S, increase our Y coordinate by that much, because Y goes down for some reason. Press A, we go left. Press D, we go right. So the next thing to do, this is all like we're just adding and subtracting to our coordinates on the screen, which is very simplistic. And actually, not many of the things you want to do in games involve just moving exactly vertically or exactly horizontally. So we should get into like directions and angles and stuff. And in particular, I love to use mouse controls in games. So most of the games I make involve mouse controls in some way. So to get started in that, I think we should have the player face the cursor. So let's go into... I'm actually going to edit the sprite quickly because right now, how would we know if the player is facing the cursor? Because he has no directionality at all. It's just an amorphous black blob. So let's give him some eyes. And everything in GameMaker is facing to the right. So let's... How big is this? Can't really tell. Okay, let's do eyes like that. This is rapidly turning to World of Goo, isn't it? And like that, there we go. This is quite unlike the style of any game I've worked on before. So our player character now has eyes, and when we play the game, we'll see that it's just facing to the right all the time. That's just the default rotation. I'm going to have to explain GameMaker angles at some point. I'm dreading it because it's just strangely counterintuitive. What we want is for the player to face the cursor. So all of this code is all about the movement. So I'm actually just going to add a comment here. If I do /star, then everything goes green between this /star and the //. That's not something you need to know. It's just all you need to know is that stuff in green is not being executed. It's not a line of code. It's just a comment for my purposes, and it's useful to kind of block things off like that. So everything under there is movement. And now we're going to do facing. You don't have to write these comments at all. That's just from my convenience. So we've got to change the rotation of the player, and that is we're really just talking about the apparent rotation, like which way does it look like he's facing, because it doesn't really matter. That's all we care about for now. And the term for that is image angle, because it's the angle at which the image is being displayed. And we want it to be facing towards the mouse cursor. Now I have to think about what that actually means, because that direction will be different as the cursor moves around. It'll also be different as the player moves around relative to the cursor. And if you're moving both, it's going to be changing all the time. So we want the angle from the player's position to the mouse's position. And that's actually pretty easy. There's a function especially for finding angles like that, which is point_direction. So as before, when you write a function like this, and you need to give us some information, you put that information in brackets. So open bracket. Now, as I'm typing this, if you look down the bottom, in fact, as I was typing it, it was probably going to pop up with this anyway, wasn't it? Yeah, if I start typing point, it comes up with all the different things that we might mean by that. Point direction is the first one, so you can just press enter to autocomplete. And then when you open the brackets, if you look down at the bottom of the screen, down here, it tells you what it wants from you. It wants an x coordinate, a y coordinate, and then another x coordinate and another y coordinate. So x1 and y1 are the first position, and x2 and y2 are the second position. So it's saying, oh, you want a direction from me? Well, where do you want it going from, and where do you want it going to? And if you're unclear on, like if you just look at that and think x1, what's that? Again, just middle click on anything you don't understand, and it'll pop up the help, and it'll explain in very clear terms, this is exactly what we need from you. We need the x coordinate of the first thing, the y coordinate of the first thing, and so on. So we want it to go from the player to the mouse. We already know what the player's coordinates are, right? That's X and Y. Another kind of convention thing, X is always first and Y is always second. I mean, it tells you that down the bottom, so you don't need to remember that really. So X is horizontal, Y is vertical. And the location you want to look at is the mouse's location, and luckily GameMaker has a special word for that, which is mouse_X and mouse_Y. So what we said there is we want the angle of our player to be the angle from us to the mouse cursor, which is basically just saying, look at the mouse cursor. From here, look at the mouse cursor. So we're just going to click the green tick on that, click the green tick on that, click the play button, and actually I don't know if this is going to work. And the player looks at the cursor. How cool is that? And so if I move the cursor around the player, as he spins to face it, God, he's deformed. But also if I leave the cursor where it is and I move the player, he starts looking at it. Or she. It's kind of genderless at the moment. So that's the start. It's starting to look like it could be a sort of twin stick shooter or something. I think we're not going to do anything too radical. I think we'll probably make a game about shooting stuff because, depressing as it might be, that is what we know how to make in terms of like games. Shooting stuff is just really easy to do in code and easy to model. And there are other non-violent interactions that are easy to model, but they're not that much fun to play around with. And gaming as a culture is still in the early stages of exploring the how to make things that are really, really fun or really, really interesting that aren't at all violent. There are loads of them, but there are loads more to discover, and we're not going to do that because this is A, because it's difficult, but B, because this is a tutorial project, and one of the most important things is we have to keep the scope really small. We have to keep it really simple. We just want to make this and fucking forget about it. And that's a mistake I made when my first ever game was Gunpoint, and that took 3 years to make. And you don't want your first project to last 3 years. You want it to just get it done and go through all of the steps quickly on a small scale thing, and then you know what's hard and you know what's easy, so when you start your real project, you have a good sense of that kind of stuff. So, we've made the player face the cursor. I think we should make it shoot. Let's just have it, when you click, we fire a projectile at the cursor. We haven't got anything to shoot at yet, but I think probably the shooting part is more important than the enemy's part right now. I don't know. Doesn't really matter at this stage. So as before, when we created the player, if you remember, we didn't just create an object out of nowhere. We had to create a sprite so that the game would know what it looks like. So again, you can right-click on the word sprite, or just on any sprite, anything under the sprites category, and you'll get the option to create sprite. We're going to call it S. Let's call it bullet. Projectile will probably be more accurate, but let's keep things simple. Then you click Edit Sprite, and from here you just go File, New, and it's going to be the same size as the player, which is too big. But actually I'm going to keep those dimensions the same, because we don't have to make it that big. That pops up a frame, and you double click to edit that frame, and then we want to zoom in a bunch. The reason it's quite nice to have the canvas size be the same as it was for the player is that if I draw something much smaller than the canvas size, I know it's that much smaller than the player. So we have a frame of reference. So let's not make it black because that'd be a bit boring. Let's kind of pick an orange here somewhere. I'm not going to go through like every little control of the image editor because it's much like any other image editor, and this is not an art tutorial. At the end of this, you'll be none the wiser as to how to create good art. Let's just make a little bob like that. We're not going to do anything more fancy than that because time is more important than quality right now. That's actually totally off-center, isn't it? Okay, well we drew it at that size, but it is more important that we get the origin right than it is that we keep the canvas size consistent. That doesn't really matter. So in order to make sure that we actually do get it center, I'm going to go back to Edit Sprite, and I'm just going to say Transform Crop, and that just means cut out all the transparent stuff around the interesting bit. Then I click the green tick again, and click center again, and then we can't really see what the hell's going on there because it's tiny, but we know that it's going to be in the center of the actual bit we see. That's might seem like a minor thing, and it kind of is, but it's a bullet, right? So whether or not it hits something is kind of important. Like, if it doesn't look like it hits something, and in the game logic it does, then we're in some serious trouble, and the game will feel like shit. So, let's... Wait, what are we doing? We're going to create an object for that now. So we created the sprite, but we haven't made anything that we can actually control, so we need to make an O bullet. Again, the convention is I just use the first letter of the type, so that we never end up with two things of the same name. Now, bullet, what code do we need on the bullet? Probably nothing. Because the bullet isn't going to like steer itself. It isn't going to do anything of its own accord yet. It may never. There are some objects in my current game, heat signature, which have no code at all. They're just a thing. And the only reason they do anything is because some other object tells them to do that. And it's quite good to divide code in kind of a logical way. Like a bullet doesn't think, it doesn't have much decision making to do, so it won't make any decisions. Whereas our player is going to decide whether to fire or not. And so I want to try doing a very simple test first. And so what we want, in order to fire this, we're going to have to create the bullet object. So I'll just show you how to create something first. So we're going to go back to our if statement. This is really a separate category, and we'll call it firing, I guess. If. Now this time we're not going to check a keyboard key, we're going to check a mouse button. So as a mouse, and as we're typing, it'll pop up with a bunch of stuff. We want, I think we're going to have, let's just do mouse button, just the first default one. The difference between these is mouse button is triggered all the time that the mouse is held down. Mouse button pressed is only triggered as the mouse button goes down, and released is only triggered as it comes up. But we are going to go for the all the time ones. All the time the mouse is being held down. Again, it's a function that we need to give some information to. We need to tell it which mouse button we're talking about. So we open brackets, and the special word for the left mouse button is MB left. If that's difficult to remember or in any way confusing, again, just middle click on the mouse check button thing, and it's actually used in their example there. They use MB left, obviously, because it's the most common thing. But if the thing you were looking for wasn't in the help there, it's always, you can always just click into the category that this is under, and you'll get a load of information about exactly what the words are for everything. So I'm not going to teach you to like memorize these special words. You can always look them up. You don't need to worry about that. So if the left mouse button is being pressed, then let's just eventually want to create a bullet at us and then shoot it out towards the cursor. But for now, we just want to check that making it is working in the first place. So we want to create it, and the word for that is instance create, instance underscore create. As you're typing, you'll see it pop up. And again, we open brackets. Now we need to tell it, look down the bottom to see what it needs from us. It doesn't just need the type of object we want to create. It actually wants to know where we want to create it to. So for now, if we create it on ourselves, we might not see it because it'll be inside us. So just for testing purposes, we're going to create it at the mouse cursor. And we already know what that is from previously, mouse X, mouse underscore Y. And then now we type in, we want to create a bullet object, and we made a bullet object, and we called it O bullet, so we type in O bullet. And then we just close bracket. And that is all we need to actually create the thing. And now we just close the curly braces, which is shift and square bracket. As I say it, I'm going to check that this thing is still recording, because in the previous video I managed to stop my stream by pressing that. I've disabled that shortcut now. Right, so firing. When we click, if the left mouse button is held down, we want to create an object at the mouse's position and of the type O bullet. So these objects are actually kind of types of things. They're not necessarily unique single things. The player will only have one of them in this single player game. But once we get into making more bullets, there might be multiple bullets, but we don't need to create a new object for each one of those. So there's just the bullet is a type of thing, and we can create as many of them as we like on the fly. So we click OK, we click the green play button, and now the little guy is looking at the cursor, and when we click, nothing happens. Okay, I know why it's gone wrong. Have you seen it yet? I forgot to set the sprite for the bullet. So I didn't add any code to it, but I forgot to actually tell it to look like anything. So it was working just then. It did create a bullet, but we couldn't see it because I didn't tell it which sprite to use, so it used no sprite. Again, nothing happens unless you tell it to happen. So clicking OK, and clicking the green play button. And this time, we'll click, and an orange dot appears. It's amazing. Look at this raw firepower we have. And in fact, because I did this, I had it create when the mouse button is held down, regardless of whether it was down previously or not. If I hold it down and like draw a line, it makes them all the time. And it's making one every 30 times a second. It's checking the mouse's position and it's creating one if the mouse is held down. And I'm holding the mouse button down now, so I'm drawing it. So we were going to make a shooting game, now we could make a drawing game if we wanted. Because we've discovered a way to draw things with the cursor. Probably I won't though. So let's just... Oh look, we've made like a little obstacle course for us. You could have to draw the maze for yourself and then go through it. So this is a good thing, like, for our test game we're going to do something pretty boring, straightforward, but as you're messing around, you will probably be discovering weird bugs and glitches and unexpected things that give rise to game design ideas. That's the great thing about doing this, is even if you go in with no ideas for what to do, you discover them as you go. When I started Gunpoint, I didn't have any idea for like a hacking mechanic or anything. It was just going to be like a side-scrolling thing where you break into buildings somehow, and I don't know. And as I was making it, I came up with the idea for the hacking mechanic, which became the whole centerpiece for the game, and is the thing that actually made it work, I think. So, now we can create the bullet when we click, but it doesn't go anywhere, and it creates in the wrong place. It creates at the mouse cursor, which we don't want. So, what we could do, whatever we do, we're going to need to manipulate this bullet after we've created it. And right now we just create it. Instance create creates the thing, but after it's created it, we don't have a way of telling it what to do. Because we don't know how to access it, we don't really know what... as you saw, when I hold on the button, I'm creating thousands of these. So if I was to say, now I want the bullet to move, the game maker wouldn't know which bullet we mean. So when we create it, we want to remember its name. We want to give it a name. So let's say, my bullet equals instance create this. So instance create is a thing that does something, but also it returns a number, and that number is the unique ID of the thing it created. So you don't have to use that number for anything, but if you use instance create on the as if it's a number, we're saying my bullet equals this, whatever the value of this is, that's what we want my bullet to be, then there is a number there for us to store, so that's great. And again, to define a variable in GameMaker, you don't need to do anything, you just think of a word and say that equals this, and I don't have to tell it what type of thing I'm making, I don't have to tell it, I don't have to define this at any point before now. Right now I say my bullet is this. So from now on we can say, you know how we've been referring to X and Y here to mean our position? That's because this code is running on the player. So every time we say X, it says, oh, you probably mean your X, right? And we do. But now we want to talk about the bullets X and Y. So to do that, now that we've got a name for the bullet, we've given it a name, we can just type things like mybullet.x equals mybullet.x plus 1. That would be advancing our X coordinate 1. That doesn't really help us at the moment. What we're going to do instead is I think we're just going to use GameMaker's built-in variables for this. So for our thing, for the sake of introducing variables, I made up a variable called mySpeed, and we manually add that each frame. For the bullet, we're actually going to use the built-in speeds cut in here, because after I did this, I thought, I bet GameMaker has a more beginner-friendly way of doing this, and it does. So I was going to tell you a really complicated way of doing this, but now we're going to do it the simple way. So yeah, we can access my bullet by just typing its name, and then we do dot, and the property we're going to set is, let's set its direction first. So we can just do mybullet.direction, which I didn't know until I just looked it up. And we're going to say that equals image angle, because that's the direction we're facing, right? We want the bullet to fire the direction we're facing. That will be towards the mouse, but we don't need to recalculate that. So then we just need its speed, and mybullet.speed. If you remember in the first video, I was showing you why I always use a capital letter in my variable names, so they don't conflict with the reserved words that the GameMaker has, and speed was the one I used as an example. And it turns out we can just set the speed, and if we set the direction too, then it will travel in the way we want it to. So what should the bullet speed be? Our speed is 10, so I think about 20. Should be faster than us, but it shouldn't be. If you make it crazy fast, it might go so fast that you don't even see it, like it's only on screen for like a couple of frames, and at 30 frames a second you won't see that. So yeah, we just set its direction, the direction we're facing, set its speed 20, And that should be it. So click the green tick, and let's try it out. Haha, yes! Excellent. So now we create a massive spray of bullets. And in fact we can spin around and it does all the curvy stuff. And suddenly, I didn't really plan it this way, but it kind of looks like a bullet hell game, right? I was thinking of like clicking once to fire one bullet, but actually it's quite difficult to do that because it's creating these 30 times a second while the button is held down, so even a quick tap will spray them out like crazy. And it's quite fun. So I think we'll leave it there. That's we've got a little dude with eyes, he's shooting, that's a video game. That's all you need. And I think next time we'll probably do some enemies. And I won't give you anything to do yourself yet. I think probably after the next one I'll kind of come up with a list of like, here's some things you could do and send in. So don't send me anything yet. When you do, I will need to figure out exactly how you do that and how we make sure we all have the right permissions and everyone's happy with what we can do with it and what we can't. But that's it for this time.